Welcome to Holts Auctioneers. Today we're going to check out the December the 7th sealed bid auction. There's 4,000 or 5,000 lots in there. Let's go. Welcome inside what I consider to be one of my favourite places. This is like a happy place, a comfort place. It's filled with things that I know a little bit about, and I'm always on the hunt. It's stimulating to be hunting for what I'm going to buy next, which is always, as you may have seen, some kind of curious junk. And there is a piece of curious junk that has caught my eye straight away. Lot 6386, a Ruger Red Label all-weather. So I'm led to believe that this gun is actually stainless steel barrel construction. And that is fascinating to me because making stainless steel shotgun barrels is extremely hard. Interesting things that you pick up straight away is that top rib is not attached. It's sort of pinned in place or had a slide in place, probably held in place by that 4 bead. But I want to know how those barrels are held into the monoblock. It's £400 to £600, so I feel like it might just be a case of buying it and then researching to find out. There's no solder because there's a clear gap between those tubes and the monoblock. It's fascinating to me. I Googled this when I was doing some research on the Ruger the other day, and I couldn't find a definitive answer. If you know, please put it in the comments, but only if you know, not a guess no, because fake news isn't fun. I like this gun. I like any gun that's slightly different. I like a practical over and under. Stainless steel. I like anything that pushes the boundaries. This definitely pushes some boundaries, but Holt's videos aren't really about stainless steel over and unders. Let's check out side by side. It would be wrong to come to a Holts Sealed Bid sale and not look for the world's cheapest Boss, Holland or Purdy's, and I have this one here today. This is lot 6500, a Boss & Co. 20 gauge side by side. Built in 1873, this wasn't born as a shotgun. This was born as a double rifle. As you can see, it's got much chunkier proportions. It has 25-inch barrels with rifle-esque profile. You have a flat rib with a slight bit of detailing left on it just to catch the light out, but it's very much the rifle. When you pick it up and you realize it's 7 pounds, 13 ounces, it definitely was born a rifle. But it is not a rifle anymore. It is a shotgun, a 20 bore. You pull the side lever that way, the gun opens up. It is a non-rebounding gun, which means to open it, the hammers must be brought to half cock. I mean, you can take it to full cock if you want, because it has these little safety latches on the side that will lock those hammers in place, which is kind of nice. £700 to £900 buys you a 20 bore Boss side by side. I genuinely thought about not sharing this with you because I kind of wanted it. Yeah, it's a restock, and yeah, it's not perfect, but I can't afford a Boss side by side. I can afford something like this. And honestly, for all of its sins, when you actually close it up and mount it up, you can definitely shoot it. It's big, heavy barrels. No, they're heavy, small, heavy barrels. They're 25-inch barrels. I can't help but love it. Like, the wood is plain and the restocking job is average, but yeah, the heel plate's nice. We'd quite like that. The engraving is lovely. The gun is a Boss-ish. I guess the purists wouldn't like it, but I'm not that much of a purist. I am, but not when it comes to pure practicality. £700 to £900. They had one like this in here before, but it didn't say Boss on it, and I almost bought that in 28 gauge. It's got to be worth a cheeky bid. Although, as we say, serious bids win, silly bids don't. There's always someone going to bid slightly higher, and if they want it, that's just the way that it works. The reality is this is going to be, realistically, 1,200 I would have thought would win it. I shouldn't be saying this is my full strategy. It's £700 to £900. To win it, the winning bid is 1,200 plus 30% commission on top, or 25% commission plus VAT. 30% of 1,200 is 1,500 in total. Really not that bad for a Boss side by side. And you know, it's kind of a cool story that it's still going. It's more useful to me as a 20 bore, £7.13 gun than a, whatever this would have been, some black powder horrific cartridge. Problems? It's restocked. It is real heavy for a 20 bore, and it's missing the right hand nipple and firing pin. These aren't the end of the world, but you know, got to put you off now. I've sold it to you, just so that no one bids more than 1,200 for it. No, I don't know. I probably should be saving at the moment. I say that all the time. This caught my eye pretty quick as well, mostly for the size of that barrel. When you pick it up, you realise that very quickly this is a silenced shroud. And it's made by no other than Breton Gaucher, the guys who make Baby Bretons and all kinds of other mad stuff. It's a bolt action, single shot 410 shotgun with an integral silencer. What's interesting about it is not perhaps the quality of build, but most silenced 410s aren't built as such and they're not very nice. This one, you mount it up and you feel like you'd actually shoot it to a certain standard. It's all a bit plasticky, but that's okay. It's probably cheap. It's lot 6668. I'll let you know, tell me what it is in the comments, because if I look, I'm gonna bid. If I look, I'm gonna bid. This is another thing. I clocked this straight away. I've seen one of these before. This is, I believe, is a Zolly. It's definitely a Zolly. Look at this push button forend release. It's different. I don't know if I prefer it in any way to a normal pull lever. The push lever is a bizarre thing. Just having to push that in to then take the forend off. But I love the profile of it. I think that's a really good looking thing. It is a Zolly Tiger Skeet. Tiger Skeet sounds like an unacceptable British tradition in like the 1800s. High house, low house, tiger released from each. I mean, they did it with live pigeons. Tigers aren't that different, are they? Do you remember that gun in the main sale, that custom Browning with the engraving down the rib? Well, that was a little bit too much money. I'm always interested by custom Brownings, or interested in custom Brownings. And we have one here that is 10% of the price of the other, and I thought it'd be quite fun to have a little look and compare thoughts. This one is interesting. It is lot 6112 in the December 2023 sealed bid sale. It is £400 to £600, which is give or take 10% of what the other gun was in the sale for. This gun was born in 1970 as an original action, probably as an A1, and then was subjected to some custom work somewhere in the middle. It's a skeet gun. It's got the 12mm parallel rib, 25 3/4" barrels with skeet and skeet choking. It has the hallmarks of a skeet shooting gun. It's been modified. The other hallmark of it being a skeet gun is this. The stock has been cut and had another piece of wood inserted on top to get someone's face high enough. Not all skeet guns have this, obviously, but you do see it on more skeet guns than anything else, or I've seen this on more skeet guns than anything else. It comes up extremely short, and the pitch of this is insane. Like, you move your head a little bit and you can go from seeing loads of rib to not being able to see any rib in about 1.5 inches. It clearly fitted the guy who had it, or lady who had it, and that's important. But you're probably not buying this gun for the stock. Given that you can buy Browning B25 stocks, not 10 a penny, but with relative ease, and have them fitted for a small amount of money, this shouldn't like stop you from getting this. And neither should the barrels, because you can also have other barrels fitted. That said, maybe you want 25 3/4" barrels. Maybe you're that guy. The forend is interesting. The forend is definitely not original. I mean, the stock isn't either, but the forend is not original. You can sort of see how bad that headwork is up the top here. One presumes that is from a completely different era of Browning and was just clipped on here. Yeah, it's really tight. That's in really good order, which is surprising because most 1970s Brownings are tight as hell. The thing that is loose is the forend. It's got a bit of a wobble, but that's probably just a loose screw, and I almost feel the need to go and fix that now. The forend is hand checkered, same as the stock. It's a custom Browning, you would expect nothing less. But the action is really where I want to spend the time, because you could get new barrels and wood for this action if this action turned you on. And the amount of work that has been put into this gun is disproportionate to the price one would pay if one wanted to purchase it. Now we've looked at the bad points, let's look at the good ones. And the good one is this action. It is a very nicely engraved action. It's not going to be to everyone's tastes, but you know, not everything has to be to your tastes. On this side you have a Canthus scroll, that textured background with those little circles in. It's almost like rayskin, shagreen. I always thought that was quite nice. And you have a skeet field behind it. Look, not everyone likes shooting skeet. Not everyone's going to appreciate the look of this scene, but I think it's really nice. The shooter looks great. The skeet things look cool. It's arty, and I like that. I also like the trees in the background. On the bottom, and this is where it gets a bit weird, right? It has a mouflon. I like it's like an Art Deco mouflon, again with the acanthus and the texture. You have RL engraved in gold with a flying clay on the trigger guard, and I've gotta say, I don't hate the flying clay. There's a lot about this gun that I wouldn't do for myself, but one has to appreciate it as a thing of its time, right? That thing, its time could be now. RL, that's less convenient for me, but you know, you can have that taken out, filled up, do whatever you want, or you just have it. It's all part of this gun story. Or, you know, I like this idea, you can get a spare trigger guard and put it in there if it really offends your sensibilities. Or just change your name. In fact, it's probably cheaper to change your name than it would be to get a new colour trigger guard custom engraved to match. So, there you go. RL. Ralph Lauren. Ralph Lauren. This was Ralph Lauren's gun. It may shock you to not find that out, that it's just sat here in the sealed bid sale, but it could be true. It's not verified, but it's a nice idea. Anyway, ridiculousness over. They've got a woodcock on the other side, and I quite like that. A woodcock is a beautiful bird in flight. You can see why they engrave so well. Like these, such a elegant animal. Like a pheasant is so streamlined in the air that you can really tell when it's not right, whereas a woodcock, because you see them in so many positions in the air, I just think they lend themselves to being in an awkward position, and so when an engraving puts them in a slightly awkward position, it looks amazing. I like it. The background texture is different. It's a really, again, it's a really nice thing from an era that's, oh, it's gone now. Would I buy this action and put new barrels and a stock onto it? Yeah, I think I would actually. I think a spare B25 stock, you're looking for a nice one, 150 to 300. A spare set of B25 barrels. There's probably some in this auction. I could have a look in the catalogue, I'm sure, on the Holts website. This is genuinely representative of somebody's life and passion. Ralph Lauren loved this gun. I think it's a nice gun to love, and it deserves somebody who's going to continue to love it. I am too romantic when it comes to guns, and in no other portion of my life. For those of you who are interested, links in the description. Go and check these guys out. They have a lot of guns. If anything, I consume way too many hours playing on the Holts website, looking for guns, looking at things and learning, because it's as much a learning experience than anywhere else. I don't think there's anywhere else on earth that has this level of sporting guns in one room that changes over with so many curiosities. And if there is, well, I'd like to go there too. Simon, rather predictably, you've brought out your favourite gun of the sale.
The grand reveal of, yeah, this is typical me, isn't it? It's a box lock non-ejector, a good, solid, working gun that you could shoot clays, sporting clays with really, really nicely.
Why not game?
Oh, you could shoot game with it if you're minded to, absolutely. But this is a wildfowling type gun, so it's got this broad file cut rib, long 30-inch Damascus barrels, 2 3/4-inch chambers, 1/4.5 choke. You know, that's fine for most game shooting, but you've got to be able to swing it right. And if you're used to lightweight guns shooting game, then it's probably not for you. But if you're used to an over and under, and you have quite a bit of weight in your barrels already, and you want to move into the side-by-side market, then this is probably the right choice. Ignore the fact it's a non-ejector. You don't really need ejectors.
I mean, not for clay shooting in the slightest.
Exactly.
You can either game shooting that you choose to take this on.
Yeah, exactly. So, but this is, as I say, Ellis Brothers, St Mary Square, Birmingham, and 1904, the right era of gun making for me. And there's nothing flash about it other than the fact it's a good, solid gun.
You say that, I think most people would disagree. This is a very good looking classic piece. There's a lot of very flash things about it. Refined might be the better word.
There's quality touches here and there. The engraving is nice and elegant and straightforward and simple. The top of the action's got a nice beam, you know, nice broadness to it, and it flows nicely into the top lever. It's got a greener style crossbolt as well. So it is designed to last this. It's designed as a big, strong gun for shooting larger loads. It has done a fair bit of work in its life. It's not 100%. There's a few spaces in the fore end to tighten up onto the barrels. There's a fraction of movement between the barrels and the action, but I will forgive it that.
How much?
Estimates £200 to £400. Plus commission.
You can't be expecting like a lot for that money. But what you can get is a 115-year-old
beautiful, solid
gun
that can shoot modern cartridges of any description.
And I appreciate that you are different to the rest of the world, in that you use these day in, day out.
I do,
But for someone like me, who is an occasional side-by-side unit, wants to take one out and feel a little bit of that special occasion.
Yeah, I mean, it's not everybody's cup of tea, because I was surprised when we did the trying to convince Ant about side-by-sides film.
Yeah.
He did not want a side-by-side that mimicked the handling of an over and under.
Interesting.
And it was interesting, because I thought he would.
Yeah.
When you put a lightweight gun in his hands, he suddenly felt more comfortable. But this mirrors the handling, this mirrors the driving you've got to do with your left hand, or right hand if you're left-handed, of an over and under. And that's one of the reasons I like it, with that solid dependency of swing for clay shooting. I don't shoot game and clays in the same way, as I've said before, but this for clay shooting for me is ideal.
Generally speaking, most people went with the standard format of side lock and look to their shotguns as time progressed. Everyone obviously saw what the top boys were selling, and if you look at a Holland, a Purdy and a Boss, they are different, but they're also similar. They're sort of square bar side lock. Someone like Blanche tried to do things differently, and I think they really succeeded. They've got a real strong following as a niche market for those who appreciate the finer arts of gun design. There is somebody who didn't do that, and that is Charles Lancaster. One does appreciate them breaking the mold and sticking with this design over a longer period of time than any others, but it just doesn't have much elegance. It reminds me of an elephant, in fact, an unelegant elephant, or Cyrano de Bergerac. I think it's an unnatural line. It's not without joy though, right? These deep fences here that actually cut down into the bar of the action, I've always thought that was quite a nice touch. But these locks, they're a no from me. Do you like them? I know that they have a strong following as well, strangely, but I just can't fall in love with a Lancaster that looks like that. It's not for me. But that said, the amount of things that I've changed my mind on over the years after coming to Holts and being exposed, maybe one day I'll release an admission that I actually like them now. Exposure does do the world of good, right? What's the story of this Browning Satori? Wouldn't you like to know? Yes, that was a childish joke and it brought me great joy. This Browning Satori is £600 to £800. It is lot 6166A and is a 28 gauge over and under. Many of you will have followed my fascination with this particular caliber and specification of thing over the last year and a bit. And I don't think I found the right one for me yet. And I don't know if this is the right one. It's £600 to £800, which is fair money for a 1987 28 gauge Browning Satori. The interesting thing about 28 gauge Browning Satoris, in fact all sub gauge guns, is they hold such good value secondhand, to the point that I'm actually considering going down the new route unless I can find, I mean, I could buy a side-by-side 28 gauge. This is not a show about my obsession with 28 gauge. This is a show about this Satori, so let's talk about it. What do you have? You have a 14 3/4 inch stock, including this relatively unexciting pad. I've fitted hundreds of these over the years. They're very practical, but the look doesn't do a lot for me. It's a grade 1 piece of wood, usually American walnut. It is American walnut. Oil finished, which is nicer than lacquer, potentially. Hand checkered. Long tang. I like that, the long black tang. It's a nice addition. It does weigh 7 pounds, which is not particularly light, but it's not that heavy either. I reckon if you lost that pad, you'd lose a pound. The beaver tail forend on the front mixed with that ramped raised rib indicates to me that this was probably designed as a skeet gun originally. There is multi-caliber skeet in America, and this, being a Satori black action, is more of an American model than a British one. I expect some did come over here, as we always cross-pollinate a few different models, usually as limited runs in either country, but this is kind of interesting. It's a 28-inch barrel with fixed quarter and improved cylinder chokes. You know, this does tick a lot of boxes for me. It is a little left-handed. That you'd have to live with. And it does have a little crack in the stock that runs down to about there. That you'd also have to live with. £600 to £800 for a 28 gauge over and under Browning Satori black action. I like the engraving. I like it. It's really not a bad shout. But I don't think it's the 28 gauge I'm looking for. This is perhaps a touch too practical. Perhaps it doesn't exude the romance that I want. I don't think it is a 28 gauge action, by the way. I think it's actually a 20 gauge action with 28 gauge barrels clipped into it. But I think that is pretty much standard. Either way, guys, I thought you'd be interested in that one. Because I spent half an hour looking over it, ripping it apart and convincing myself that this isn't the one. I'm pretty impulsive, and so it's interesting to me that I haven't bought a 28 gauge yet. It's now gone on a long time, it's become a bit of a thing. Maybe I'll just commit and just buy a side-by-side like I did with the 410. At least then there's no pressure to go and shoot it to a decent standard, and it can just remain as a fun fantasy. Benelli as a gun maker has made some amazing guns over the years and has caused relatively little controversy. I think that's fair to say. However, there's a couple of models, in fact there's only one model of semi-automatic that causes any kind of discussion, including negative words, and that is this, the Vinci. The Vinci was released in 2009. This particular one, lot 6694C, was built in 2010, so it's an early one. There was a Vinci that was a 3-inch chambered model and a Super Vinci that was a 3.5-inch chambered model. By 2019, they were all discontinued, which is a pretty short-lived tenure for a brand new model of gun from Benelli. I don't know if they were looking to create something like next level, I don't really know. What's interesting is in 2012 they actually put this into military testing, not I think to sell it to the military. Maybe they did. That was the intention. I don't know. But just to prove that it was super hard and reliable, because it very quickly gained a relationship with the users that was negative. A lot of that was to do with that this is a Vinci inertia system rather than the Benelli inertia system. It's ever so slightly different. It also requires a little bit of brain power to put together and take apart. And that's different. Anytime anyone steps outside the realms of normality with a design of pump or semi-automatic, it gets slated. And that's because people just like what they like that's familiar. Where were we? Why does it not? Why do people don't like it? A lack of reliability. It's not lack of reliability. As Michael would say, you wouldn't put petrol in a diesel car and expect it to work. However, it is a semi-automatic shotgun, and you just expect to be able to buy shells and put them in it. I appreciate that that's not the way that this works in reality, but it's an important facet all nonetheless. There were some rusting issues with the gun as well, apparently, in the early days, but they did seem to sort that out. I mean, Benelli have the BAST system now, the best coating, that's pretty solid, and they've just created a new barrel profile, that's quite cool. But this is just an important part of Benelli's history, and they does seem to divide opinion. I mean, the only other thing they ever did that was controversial was the 828U, and they seem to sort that out in the end, but the early days was bad. How do you take it apart? It's unlike any other gun you'll have seen. Press this button down, turn the nut at the front to the right, and this bounces off. This then lifts up, and inside you can see the mag tube, hammer, trigger unit all built in there. I love the modular concept, it's definitely cool, and the fact that you could potentially in time have had different modules to put on the gun. That would have been interesting, but they never got to that stage. This then half twists off, and you have a gun that fits in this incredibly impractical case. I remember I was working my first job in the gun trade, and that would have been, what, shortly after these were released. And I remember having a huge crush on them. The lines, the look, the case, this was cool modern stuff. Strange how things change. Do I still chase modern stuff? Probably. Would I still own a Vinci? Probably. Reliability isn't a factor that I'm that interested in most of the time, clearly, from my track record with guns and cars. And it is nice to be slightly contrarian and different. However, it's a Benelli, and as such, the pad system at the back is cool. Like, you can pop it off. That's quite a smart thing. However, they don't get much bigger than this. So I will never be I shot a Benelli back in the day and I had a thing taped to the back, but I don't think it's a choice I will make until Benelli start caring about the very small percentage of shooters over 6'1". The Vinci is definitely a mechanically interesting gun because they really didn't throw the rulebook out, but they went back to the drawing board and started again. Most other Benellis basically feed from the same teat and being extremely similar, and it works, and there's nothing wrong with that. One of the things I like about this design, well, like quite a few things, but we're not here for an hour-long discussion on the Vinci, is the return spring is nice and small and compact in the top of the action there. I know that that's a really silly thing to get excited by, but in a world where there's these huge bolt return springs, that's interesting. Also might be why that this is more fussy than some other guns. To put it together, very simply, this clips into the side. 1, 2, 3, click. It's not particularly convenient, I must admit. It's definitely not like an easy thing to put together. You actually need like some kind of intuition. But then you see most people get their new over and under. You imagine when everyone picks up a brand new over and under, and we've all been that guy. And right in the early days, and working in the gun shop, I remember everyone trying to clip them together for the first time. Even new model, if you've never done it before, everyone struggles to put a gun together for the first time until you know how. Everything's tough until you learn. But I guess, I don't know, is the semi-automatic market different? Are we so attuned and accustomed? A bit like when we looked at that Beresleisbosen Philipstad pump action. Is the market so used to what it's used to in certain sectors that it doesn't want new stuff? This next bit's fairly simple. It does require a little bit of brute force, or strength again. This clips onto the bottom like this, he says, and then you pull it down and twist the nut, but you do have to pull it down quite hard before the nut will twist. Job done. People don't like change. I mean, that's well documented throughout history. Was this a step too far? If they release it now, would people buy into it? Probably not. It is a faff. They are a faff. They're a faffy gun. They're definitely a geek's gun. But for £400 to £600, you could be a geek and own one too. You must admit, it's a fine looking thing.
Yeah, I am a smart mouth. How do you think I wonder where I am, who I am by now? Just another minute till we sisters sign off. So if you're not with it, wave bye bye bye. Then I'm hypnotized. They don't even know what it is. There ain't no rise, that life I saw. You can control this. Hype me up, hype me up.
I just sat down to talk about this, and I have sat on a pair of B25 barrels. There's a gun in there that could do with some of these. That's a huge improvement with a forend that actually fits the barrels. That's pretty cool. I told you there'd be some about. How much are they? 7,223. In fact, hold on. This is where we get in the middle of the weeds, because that is where we like to go. Deep, deep in the weeds. Licensable component parts, 7,223. Browning arms, 1963, so not a million miles out age-wise. 30-inch nitro barrel, 16mm vented top rib, 50 to 70 pounds. You gotta buy that gun and buy those. And then buy a spare stock, because there'll definitely be some out the back. And then you'll be onto a winner. This is what we actually came here to talk about, though. This jumped out the rack at me because it was, well, head and shoulders of everything else. It's a Joseph Bourne and Son, born in 1925, this gun. It's like 300 or 400 pounds in the auction, lot 7036. 32-inch gun, raised tapered rib, 3-inch magnum chambers, pistol grip stock, 17-inch length of pull. I mean, it's rare a gun in Holts fits me, but it does. Is that how normal people feel when they hold a gun that's slightly too big? I guess where it's semi-pistol grip, your hand drops back. We can give it that. Oh, I like that a lot. I like the fact that it fits, and that's rare. Look at that safety. I wonder if that was original or not, having those lines and that X knocked into there. This was clearly a wild fowling gun of sorts, or a pigeon gun of sorts, and the practicality overruled anything else. Was that the owner, or was that the maker? Joseph Bourne and Sons, Birmingham. I thought that was really awesome. And I know that that will amuse no one else but me, because most other people are normal height. Choosing guns to go in the Holts Sealed Bid video is kind of hard, given there are thousands out there. A lot of the time it's ones I actually want to buy, and I use this as kind of like a self-fulfilling protection thing. I'm actually guarding myself by putting these guns in here, because this one needs to be bought by someone who's not me, because I own enough guns that are projects that I'll never fulfill. And this is one of those things, but it calls to me. It's like, Johnny, buy me and store me and pretend you're going to do me up one day. This is a Trulock Brothers of Dublin. It was built in 1920, proofed in 1934. It's a 28 gauge hammer gun, and a relatively nice one at that, which is pretty interesting. It is filled with issues, of course it's filled with issues, but let's look at the good stuff first. It's got pretty wood on the stock that's in a few pieces and glued back together. It's got a horn heel plate. The stock length is 14 inches, I believe, so it's not horrific. You could extend it out. It once had flat point checkering that is worn thin. The action is scaled and beautiful. That is a nice thing. It's not being put together right, but presumably the repair on the stock caused some issues with actually putting it back together. That could, well, we'll get back into that in a minute. It has 26-inch Damascus steel barrels. It is very likely from just this feel at the back that we're going to ring these in a second and see that the barrels are shot. Underneath the forend you have some pitting, which is sad, a little bit of rust, but you have little pitting marks and spots all over the barrel. That's just what happens, and that's okay, given that this gun is 80 to 120 pounds. And when I saw that on the website, it's the first gun I went to go and look at. I want a 28 gauge, we've already talked about this, and a side-by-side hammer gun that's from Ireland. I can't help but be endeared to it. I can't help but want it. So let's have a ring of these. Where I'm feeling over the top rib here, I can just feel like it's sat ever so slightly high. These should blend into one. So let's give it a go and see what happens. Oh, so we've discussed ringing barrels to see if they ring true before. What you do is you get a set of barrels, you pop it off, and you ring the barrels. You ready for this? Rest it on your finger, and it rings like a doorbell. You hear that ring? That means that the laying is actually consistent. They are allowed to vibrate within themselves. There's no rust on the inside. It's just a good indicator that it was either well laid or that it's not needing relaying. There's no rust buildup or muck on the inside. When we ring these 28 gauge barrels, I'm so heartbroken, but I still want to buy it. You hear that? Dead. There's no ring to it. It's like a, one would guess that it's either rust pushing that up, or it's not loose by any means. Interesting. But you know, you could strip it and relay it. That's not the end of the world, and you'd end up with Oh, I'm so bad at selling this to myself. They sit on the action. So it needs a rejoint as well. And when you shake it, this stock moves side to side. And the stock is a real pig. If you look at the headwork here, it has been buggered, frankly. This is a big issue on this gun. It's probably usable, and you could probably make it more usable, but you just look at the way it is in multiple pieces, and it's not been loved. There's bits broken off everywhere because it probably wasn't then put back together correctly. It's a real shame. And yet, I'm like, yeah, you could fix that. You could have a new stock made for it. It would be an interesting process, I guess, if you were to get this gun restocked from scratch and have the barrels relayed. You'd have maybe T-chokes with some extended chokes in the end to give it some barrel length. You'd have an amazing little gun. It would take some kind of mad genius to want to spend that money. What would you be in for? This gun plus all the work? $4 grand? $4 grand for a non-ejector double trigger 28 gauge hammer gun that was not really original is a ridiculous spend, but it would be yours. And when you look at what else is on the market, that's actually quite a good thing. I know a few American guys would be into it. Now that you can get a gun out there for, if you're doing it 10 at a time, like $300 a gun, all in, that's crazy. I mean, you'd have to be a little mad, but it would be amazing, wouldn't it? Have it fully refurbed and sent over. Oh yeah. All right, dream complete, let's move on. I need to put this away. I was really hoping that it wouldn't be that bad, and it's a little bit bad. Something you may not know, but I'm really into my history, World War I and World War II history especially. And this is one of those super iconic guns that I've always wanted to shoot, and yet I don't think I have had the pleasure. And so there are two in this sale, not real ones because they didn't make many. As much as I know about history, I know a lot about these guns and where they were used and who they were used by, I don't really know a lot about the gun itself. Luckily, I know someone who does. Hi Mike.
Hello.
Talk me through this beast.
So this is a reproduction LEI, Delisle, in 45.
Which a Delisle should be in, right?
Which should be there. So they started off as a 2.2 version.
Okay, so they made multiple reproductions of the original.
So the original Delisle was 2.2.
Oh really?
Yes, it was made by Mr. Delisle, shooting rabbits and stuff in his garden. He was an engineer, as engineers do.
And then he thought, hey, this isn't enough to kill a bad guy.
So he worked for the War Ministry, in the Air Ministry, I think it was. And he thought, this will make a really good gun. So he played with them in 9mm, and they finally decided in 45.
Bigger punch,
Bigger
given
punch,
that you only had one chance, and you didn't want your
naturally-
victim to scream.
Yes, Johnny. And naturally subsonic as well, in short barrel.
Indeed, that's very interesting. I mean, I'm aware of how quiet these are. I've watched
Yes.
multiple videos on them. It's like at 50 yards, it's completely inaudible.
Completely silent, yeah.
The noisiest thing is this. I mean, the originals are pretty much priceless, given they only made 100 and something.
So, yeah, you pay 5-6 figures per one, I probably would have thought, even if they came up.
This is not.
No, so this is a LEI. LEI were a company who specialised in integral moderators and integral suppressors. And they got the permission from Sterling, who owned the rights to the Delisle, to make a new production one, basically, in the UK.
In the UK?
Yes.
Oh, that's interesting. Because it was just a converted Enfield anyway, so it's
Yes.
not out of this world to consider that you would buy an Enfield and just do this work to it.
No, it's not, from what I understand, it's crazily hard to convert one of these, because it's just...
Well, if they did it 80 years ago, we've come a long way in terms of engineering capabilities since then.
Absolutely,
in my
yeah.
head. That's awesome. And like $1 grand, right?
So this is $800 to $1,200, which is very cheap.
Are you going to buy it?
Maybe.
When you said you bought a gun at Holts, Michael, I didn't expect this.
Well, you know they had their £1 sale on.
They were clearing out all of the
They were
things that
clearing out-
nobody else wanted.
Yes.
You thought you'd buy one.
Yes. And I was the only person who bid £1.
So how much did you pay for this?
A total of £1.30. And as you can see, it's worth every penny. It's a Sussex Armory.
A Sussex Armory made in Italy. I don't think I've seen a gun this depressed and ugly in a while, Michael. We should make a full film on it.
Yes.
Yeah, my first thoughts are back from the brink, but actually, if I sprayed oil on this, it would double its value. I'm sure it will bring you great joy.
Oh, it won't. But it was £1.30.
People ask why I don't do too much on rifles, and that's because I'm interested in either end of the spectrum. Either I want it to be from 1940 or earlier, or I would like it to look like this. It's not very TGS-y. In case you were wondering, literally anybody can shop at Holts. All you need to do is register, bid. The sealed bid auction isn't a standard progressive auction, it's quite a simple concept. You put how much you want to pay in on the gun. If someone else outbids you, they win, you lose. So you do need to be quite serious with your bidding if it's something special. Values on the guns are obviously guides. However, if something is undervalued and the market value is significantly higher, you could obviously expect to pay higher. You can get lucky, and I've got lucky a couple of times, but serious bids win. All right, that's the way that this works. These guys can export or work with exporters that can get guns all around the world. And I know probably one or two too many now get exported from my guns should remain in Britain kind of mind, but I also love that because lots of guns come from all over the world to be in this auction, and that's kind of special. They've got agents all over the world that can help facilitate either bringing your guns here or taking guns here back to your country. And that's kind of what makes Holts special. It's not just Britain, it's pretty global. And that's cool. Thank you for watching, guys. This channel is made possible by our amazing sponsors. You can find out more about them in the description down below. And if you want to support the channel, you can join as a member. You get loads of extra content, well, some extra content, and occasionally we hook up and go clay shooting together as a membership group. If you don't feel like joining today, we really appreciate you watching and subscribing. Have a wonderful day. It is a midget's gun.